Okay, there we go. Welcome back, everybody, to the Star Wars podcast, where we talk all things Marvel, Star Wars, and everything in between. Please take a moment to check our show notes to find our social media, merch, and more. Today, we have a special one for you guys. We are recapping Avatar: The Way of Water in full spoiler detail. So if you haven't seen the movie, I would get out of here. And I'm here with a guy who I've connected ponytails with in a totally platonic way. It is my good friend Alex. Alex, how are you?
I'm great, Michael. I'm really happy to be here. So excited to be talking about Avatar, and I'm really excited to get into this.
Awesome. And we also double header here. One of my favorite podcasters, I'll just say it, from the Nerd Dose podcast. It is our buddy Zach. Zach, how's it going, man?
Pretty good. How are you guys doing?
So good. So excited to talk about this with you guys.
Good to be here.
I want to set up the audience a little bit. I have picked. This is like the Avengers of Avatar fans from me. These guys, there are people that like. I think most people saw Way of Water. They liked it. I would say most people liked it. These are two guys that loved it along with me. So it's going to be an echo chamber here. We're going to have a lot of good stuff to say. I want to preface though. I don't want to ignore some of the criticisms. We'll get into that. We won't be too biased here, but I'm very excited to get into this. And actually, what I want to touch on here first is I have a feeling we might have all seen this the same way, but I want to ask up front because I think it matters. I think you can have very different viewing experiences based on the format you saw. Did you see it in 3D? Did you see it in IMAX? Did you see it in both? Zach, I'll throw it to you first.
Sure. First showing, I saw it just regular 2D, plain theater in a recliner. That was nice because it was a 3-hour movie. And then 2 days later, went back, saw it in 3D IMAX. Absolutely loved it. I just saw the Avatar re-release in 3D IMAX for the first time a few months ago. So amazing. Like, this movie just blew me away with all of its visuals. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah. And Alex, you sent me a picture of the theater you went to. You're in London right now. It looked absolutely incredible. What was that? IMAX 3D? Was there anything else special about it?
Yeah, I knew for the last 13 years that I had to see this film in like the best environment possible. So I saw it at the BFI screen, IMAX 3D. It's the largest screen in the United Kingdom. It was absolutely mental. Like, the screen was humongous. I could not have been happier. I was dead center. I got exactly the seat I wanted. No reclining seats, but the 3 hours flew by, so it was all good.
Zach, I want to ask you: did you notice like seeing it the second time in IMAX 3D versus standard?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like have regrets about seeing it standard the first time? Was it not too different? Did it hold up just as well in standard?
I feel like personally, just my IMAX theater is like getting old. Like, the seats are torn up, and it was really hot. So, like, I had a nice layer of sweat above my glasses towards the end of the movie. But other than that, just those are tiny nitpicks. I thought it was great especially comparing it between the two. Oddly enough, when I saw it in original format, my projector was messed up. I like the first half of the movie was like, it wasn't on double speed, but it was definitely sped up enough to where I could tell. Like, the humans were moving faster. Like, the whole first act, the way the winged creatures were like landing, it was super, super fast. It got so bad I had to go talk to someone. And I was like, okay, is this part of the movie? And then when I saw it just the other day in IMAX, not even close. So that was frustrating for me. But I think the 3D IMAX just blew it out of the water, and I think for sure this movie's made for it.
Yeah, well, my first thought was it like the frame rate that was throwing you off? Because
Yeah.
I don't want to lead with a complaint here, but that is one of the biggest things I've been hearing is this. Yeah, I forget it's a higher frame rate than usual. It's the same frame rate they used in what is it, the Hobbit movies that people did not like. I think Gemini Man as well. I think people find it to be really jarring. I think if I do have any issue with it, is there's a lot of scenes where it changes like shot to shot. I think one in particular was when they were pulling the tracking device off the whale. There were parts where they cut to the ship and that's high frame rate, and they cut back to the kids and it's not. I was like, that's a little weird. Totally can get past it. I do want to say though, is like I don't know where you guys stand with like how that actually looks. Again, I think a lot of people hate the way it looks, but I'm here to say I think high frame rate is the future of cinema. Like I think it. I mean, I don't I don't have the facts here in front of me, but there is like science behind what the eye can capture frame rate wise, and this is beyond that. So it does feel jarring, and I think that's just the future of making movies. It's weird now, but people are gonna get used to it, and especially like I'll give it another couple of years. I say the next two Avengers movies are gonna be in high frame rate. Alex, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I was doing some research into this after seeing it because I didn't notice it. I did not have any jarring reaction. I was aware that it was in 48 frames per second, whereas the standard is 24. And reading into it, it's not the whole film, it's certain scenes. I believe it's mainly the underwater scenes and a lot of the flying scenes where they went for the 48 frames per second. Again, I didn't notice it at all, and then I was reading all of these visceral reactions to The Hobbit from 10 years ago, where that was sort of the first film to do it. Um, I don't know, made no difference to me, did not notice it, did not have any sort of bad reaction, but, yeah, I mean, it just was beautiful.
I mean, it objectively looks more realistic. I
Yeah,
guess
absolutely.
and again, we're not used to seeing movies that look that real. I never thought we'd get to the point with technology where like things are so good that it's bad. But again, objectively, this is like how the world looks. So, Zach, do you have any thoughts on this?
I was gonna say that 3D IMAX really just blew it out of the water with the depth perception. It's just having what is it? Pretty much the whole screen pushed out at you with the 3D. It's just like you said, it's insane how far technology has gotten, and it's really is progressing.
Yeah. So enough about the format here. I don't know if we have too much to say. I did want to touch on what were our expectations coming into this. I kind of feel like we were all high on this, like we were very excited for it, and then we all loved it. So I don't know. Did this exceed your expectations? Was it not quite what you wanted? Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I think for me, it definitely exceeded expectations, and my expectations going in were just, I trust James Cameron. His resume speaks for itself. Like, do not doubt James Cameron. Sorry, I don't know what else to tell you there. I think I thought the film as a storytelling device was going to be a little different. Just the structure, and there was quite a bit of jumping through plot points. But I mean, I knew the visuals were gonna be there start to finish, and I trusted that with 13 years, and I've watching James develop the world and really look at Peter Jackson, what he did with Lord of the Rings, that their story was going to like really be there this time, front and center. I had no issues with Avatar 1, but I was really glad to see that there was a definite emphasis on story in this one, and I think it just really paid off.
Yeah, I can agree with Alex on that one. I guess what the first Avatar gets like the most rap because it's like a copycat storyline. And for me, that's going into this. I just thought, okay, it's definitely going to be better. I think James Cameron for sure has learned all of the hate that he got from the first movie. And you could see it in this one. This movie focuses way so much more on the characters, the story. I didn't think that excuse me. I didn't think they were going to go in the direction where they focus so much on the children in this movie as they did. I didn't hate it. I actually really enjoyed it. just kind of felt that Neytiri kind of took a backseat of this movie, and hope to see her a little bit more with these movies to come. And I don't know, it's kind of interesting that he's got so many more movies planned out, so you kind of can understand like, oh, maybe this character didn't get as much screen time this time, so you know for sure it's going to happen kind of later on. So I don't know how you kind of feel towards that. I guess maybe that's just franchises in general, especially comparing to something like the MCU.
Yeah. So what's interesting is obviously we all have heard for years the whole when's Avatar 2 coming? It's been delayed again and again. Is essentially after Avatar 1, it was going to be 3 sequels, 2, 3, and 4, and that was it. And 2, basically they had so much story and so much content that 2 basically became 2 and 3, and then it was pushed back. So the Seed Bearer, which is the potential next one, is going to be very connected to 2. Not like a part 1 and part 2 type thing, but probably very overlapping stories, and I think together it's going to be a very cohesive watch. So I think with Neytiri especially, because she does take a back seat, but when she has her moment, she really delivers in The Way of
100%.
Water.
Yeah, I think, talk about expectations, I knew that my eyes were going to melt watching this. I love I have issues with some of the stuff in Avatar 1, but all in all, I love that movie and the story. So I had no doubts in the story. I think the thing that blew my expectations away was actually the performances. And it is so hard to like have a CGI character and have it come through, comparing that to like a real life actor, right? Especially when I guess one of my complaints about Avatar 1, Sam Worthington, just about the most milquetoast guy you could possibly get. I thought he was incredible in this. I don't know what, maybe it is like he needed more CGI, but even Sigourney Weaver as a teenager, I thought that was really great. And I do want to I'm kind of bouncing around, but I want to touch on that as well, because that's another complaint people have, that like she doesn't feel like a teenager or she doesn't sound like a teenager. Guess what? They're aliens, okay? They're not going to sound like human children. So you can go ahead and cut that one out. But yeah, from all of them, from the kids to Neytiri, I'm just gushing. I love the performances.
There was a lot of character development. I was gonna say, like, I felt. I guess we're talking spoilers, right? I felt that death from his eldest son, Neteyam. I think it was Neteyam. Neteyam. Okay, so I was it was weird because when I saw it in the 2D format, I had subtitles because in their culture, their English is a foreign language, so that's why the subtitles are up. But when I saw it in IMAX, no subtitles. So I don't know what that was about, but so I was like understanding like all of their names and whatnot, but I felt for his death. Like it really hurt. I looked over and my girlfriend was crying. Like she hated most of the movies we went to go see, like all the MCU movies except for like Wakanda Forever this year. So to see her so impacted by this movie, I was like, this is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, that's like James Cameron's thing is time. Like he really gives you, yes, it's a 3-hour film, but like it's deserved. Like the story just grows with you, and we don't have 30 MCU films and series to build these characters. There's a 2.5-hour film for Avatar 1, and then there's a 3-hour film for this one. That's not that much content. And when Neteyam does bite the bullet here, it is devastating. Like Neytiri's howl it just like rips into your core. Like you feel that all the way through. And it's just so great seeing these characters really live and develop in this film, especially since most of these characters are brand new. I just could watch it all day long.
Did you guys think it was bold for them to do 4 children? Like it was quite a bit of characters to keep, maybe not so much to keep track of, but to develop, especially since all of these characters were brand new to us.
Yeah, I do think it was ambitious, but there's enough time, and I feel like I know all of them. Neteyam, I probably knew the least, but even that, like I got an idea of who he was. They all had such distinct personalities. Obviously, the second son Loak is sort of the star here. And he gets such a great moment, one of the most beautiful shots in the whole film with the Tolkien floating in the sea. I loved them. I loved getting to know them all. They're all so different. And Spider, like, what a star is Spider. I mean, come on. Really, really cool.
Yeah, no, I thought that, yeah, I didn't mind, like, especially if you have a 3-hour movie, build that cast up, like, I love the world they're creating. I like the characters they're creating. I also thought that they were different enough. Nateam, I also didn't connect with him a whole lot. And what was interesting is, I wasn't technically sad that he died. I was sad for Jake and Natiri and what they had to go through. And because I think so much of this movie is about parenthood in a lot of ways. Like, you see, like, I'm gonna have a very strange comparison here. There's I think it's an Elmo book. It's called it's a children's book. It's called There's a Monster at the End of This Book. And his whole thing is he's trying to keep you from turning the pages, and he's like holding it together. He's like, don't turn to the next page. There's a monster at the end. And like Jake Sully kind of had that, where like he is being pushed from all sides, from the sky people trying to kill him, trying to integrate himself into this new society, trying to be a father, and all of his kids are like making mistakes and getting in trouble, and like he's sitting there just like trying to hold the pages together. And like I thought that it all comes crumbling down at that moment and at that death, and how it affects them. And you can totally see like the differences in how it affects Natiri and Jake, where Natiri just absolutely breaks down, and then Jake is like, he's just like empty at that point. It's like, I've done all of this and it didn't even matter, and that was so heartbreaking.
The scene where Spider is hiding from Natiri, oh, chills. Oh my gosh.
So much like emotional depth from him, the actor. Is it Jack Chapman? Champion? And funny enough, he's actually in Endgame, so that's kind of a fun little thing.
Well, where is he in Endgame?
He's a boy on a bike type situation.
I was going to say, when
for him to be in both of these films is quite cool for him. But yeah, gosh, I mean, I was watching him, I was like terrified for him, but simultaneously like, that's kind of your mom. Like, what's happening here? This is sad. Spider to me is the breakout here, with Rhea as well, if we can get into her at some point.
Well, let's stop down. I want to just talk about, since we're here, we'll just cover Spider, because I have a lot of thoughts on Spider. Honestly, at the beginning, and I'll kind of touch on this a little bit more, I thought the writing in the first hour was the weakest of all of it. I think it got better, but there was some weird stuff, and I think there's some weird stuff with Spider. So, like, I immediately was like, I don't know about this kid, but I think he really grew on me. I wish he had a little bit more to do. I think obviously he's being set up for a really big next couple movies, or however long he lasts. But I also wanted to talk about like his decision at the end to save his father. And I thought that was like, it's so interesting, because we see him be so much like the Na'vi throughout the entire movie. And like at the very end, it kind of shows that he still has some human in him. Like, he's not like this savage murderer. He's not the type to let someone just die like that. And I thought that was really well done. That transition between, it's nature versus nurture. And I thought this was executed well in that way.
Yeah, I give mad props to the actor, because he's the only human in this movie. Or only like big main character human. He is only interacting with mocap the entire time. So how many months was that? How many even years could he's not interact? Like, I just can't. It just astonishes me how they were able to do that. To me, I kind of looked at his decision towards the end was more of like that guilt of how he could have, like he could have prevented him if he would have kept swimming. So it just felt like that was just something he couldn't do completely, because there was a very, very small connection that he had with him. But again, he chose to leave. And I felt a lot of that, he Jake's his family. Like, you could see that through and through throughout the movie.
Yeah, I think his decision to save Quaritch is interesting, because I did not want him to save him. Like, every ounce of my being was screaming, like, stop, like, let this dude die. He's a cockroach. But he does it, and I think as a storytelling device, like, it provokes that reaction and it gets you uncomfortable. And I think that is the right move here from a writing standpoint, to not necessarily give us everything that we want. There is clearly going to be some big ramifications in progressive stories from here, with Quaritch being alive, and how does Neytiri react to this? How does Jake react to this? But I loved hating it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. I'm trying to think. I don't have much more to say on Spider here. I did want to talk because Alex, you said this was the breakout character for you. I want to talk about who I think the breakout character is. My absolute favorite, one of my favorite characters in a movie, in a like honestly one of my favorite characters of all time. It's Kiri, guys. I loved Kiri. I thought a lot of like the emotional struggle that she had in this movie, where like she, because you see him come to the island, and like she immediately clicks with it. She loves it. She's immediately like the best diver. She loves looking at the fish, and she loves it so. And then everyone is so mean to her too. And that's the thing. You see kind of like the struggle where like I feel like I'm at home, but nobody treats me like I'm at home. And like I really loved that for her. And also how it manifests in that like this chick, she's a superhero, guys. She has superpowers. Like she can like communicate with the fish, and like the way she got that freaking, I don't know what is it called, amoeba type thing to eat that man in the submarine. Like I don't know, like I thought she is like just so cool. She's like this underwater fairy, and it's not something I would expect to like, but it totally works for me.
Yeah, so I think with Kiri, like we need to go to the beginning here. Did we like the way that they presented quickly getting into where she came from, being born from Grace Augustine's avatar body? Did that click with you right away? Was that uncomfortable? Because I bought it straight away. I was in. I was like, cool. I see this. No questions. Doesn't not make sense to me.
I was gonna say, I think it was maybe a little rushed at the beginning, but for me, like it just kind of went over my head, and I just kind of just enjoyed the character more and more, and seeing her connection with Iwa progress stronger and stronger throughout the movie. I thought it was very, very powerful as a character, and she's relatable. Like I'm a big nerd. Like I got like picked out when I was growing up. Like she's like the lovable freak that we all had growing up at school. So it makes sense. I think she's a very likable character, and I'm very excited to see where she goes from there.
Yeah, so I guess my biggest question, talking about where she came from, do we want to go full Maury here? Who's the father? I'll start with my theory, and I wouldn't call it my theory. I think a lot of people are theorizing that this is possibly an immaculate conception. It's hard for me to imagine anything else, and anything else would kind of be weird. I don't know how you explain like a more natural conception without it being like very, very uncomfortable. But yeah, I mean, it would explain like her like very hard and deep connection with Iwa, and how she kind of explains that to Jake. So I don't know. I'll throw it to you, Alex. Do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is very, very clear here. Like, if you're gonna say that that's not the case, we're going down a route where Grace Augustine in the first Avatar is out doing stuff while collecting samples, and that just is not what happened. I think the bigger question is she the daughter of Grace Augustine, or what exactly is this connection with Awa? Because for me, I'm very much seeing Kiri as like Awa's avatar. Like her, because every time you see the avatar transition effect where it goes through like the electrical current sort of thing. And is this a way for Awa to be physically present in Pandora? We see at the end of Avatar 1 when they try to save Grace's life, and Grace dies saying to Jake, I'm with Awa now. She's here. I'm with her. And the next thing we know, obviously, in Avatar 2, we get Kiri. And so I think that is sort of the bigger thing here, is what exactly is this Awa connection, and less who's the dad, because Awa is Awa is Awa, right?
That's blowing my mind. No, it makes sense. Like she is the bridge to connect the Navi as well as like the humans too. Like all of it. Like it's crazy to think about. Like, okay, so for example, take this. Like Iwa is there to protect the Navi, right? She senses the threat of humans. Maybe this is her chance to kind of reach down to the Navi and maybe establish a more stronger bond than she already has with them to, I guess to say, to take on this threat. And of course, she does it with the first human who's kind of really grown to like understand what Iwa is to some kind of extent.
Yeah, and like even beyond just the Navi though, like Awa is everything on Pandora, right? And like you said, you know, Grace in the first one is sort of the big champion of Awa is just this electrical current. It's a system, it's a network that they can tap into and all of that stuff. I just rewatched Avatar 1, so I have a lot of the jargon right there. And it's interesting that in Avatar 1, Grace says, I would die to get samples from the Tree of Souls. And that is where she dies. And I feel like there's deeper meaning to that the more we're going to get into Avatar 2, 3, 4. Yeah, there's some weird stuff going on with Kiri, and I can't wait to find out what it is.
Well, I guess here's my thing. The thing that's a little weird for me. And actually, you mentioned what is it, the Tree of Souls or whatever? Because that was like their original physical manifestation or connection to Awa, right? And now that that's gone, it would make sense for something else to come. So I think it does fill that void. But the weird thing for me is like, why Grace? Why is Grace the host of this? Because she's a synthetic. She's not even really. She didn't come from that Earth, right?
Correct. She's from Earth, and obviously this is all on Pandora. I think it's where in Avatar 1, Neytiri's quite clear when Jake is like asking for help ahead of that final battle, where Neytiri is like, Awa doesn't interfere. Like that's not Awa's job to come and help you win a fight. And I think Awa is very clearly a sentient being of some sort in Pandora that Awa is learning, and Awa is starting to see that this threat of the Sky People is more severe than even Awa thinks, and cannot just sit back, which is why they interfere and they help in the first one. And then perhaps, you know, there's so much we don't know, right, about where this is heading. But I do feel like Awa is going to be more than just a network for memories, and Awa is going to have a actual voice here, and I think Kiri is that voice. We see Kiri literally in Avatar 2 use her hands and like make things happen, and that you cannot do that without deep connections to Awa.
She has the Force, dude. She's Jesus Christ with the Force. Okay, so we can come back and talk to Kira if we have anything else, but I do want to talk about Loak. And again, I told you I would not shy away with some of the issues that I had. Here, and here's the thing I want to preface as well. Like, I host a Marvel podcast where like I hate so much of the stuff they create. Like, it's like my love for things also oftentimes manifests in criticizing them. So I just want to preface that like some of my favorite things I have so many problems with, and there are a lot of problems that I have here. I think this one, in hindsight and retrospective, I like a little bit more. But Loak here, watching this movie was so goddamn frustrating with this kid constantly making mistakes. It was like the only thing he did was wrong. Like everything that he was doing was like against somebody's wishes. And like it was so frustrating to me where like it almost came like repetitive. But then like, you know, this even occurred to me the other day. I was like, that was literally me when I was his age. Like I just constantly like I guess that's the life of a child. But I think that's a lot of his story arc here. And like even up into the end when his brother dies and Jake turns to him and says, "You've done enough," which like that broke my heart too. I'm like, Jesus, like this kid, he is really he's going through it, guys. But yeah, I want to get you guys. I'll throw it to Zach first. Zach, what do you think? What do you think of Loak?
I loved him as a character. I think, like you mentioned earlier, it did seem a bit repetitive. Like, I think Jake says it to the chief like 3 times, like, I'll handle this one. Like, I'll take care of him. Like, again, but like you said, that's just what a teenager is. You just get in trouble constantly and you just learn from your mistakes. And in this case, it takes a lot longer than a normal person. But I just loved him as a character. I think we're gonna see him progress even more as like with the sequel. I think he's gonna have a lot of survivor's guilt with Natayam's death. But that scene with him and the Talokan, gorgeous, favorite scene. Absolutely loved it. The connection he had with it, just amazing. I thought like him as a character really progressed. I liked him as much as Kiri. I think he's just overall just a really great character, and I think they did a fantastic job with him.
Yeah, I think Loak again was someone who, as the movie kept going, I fell more and more in love with him as a character. I didn't mind that he kept messing up because he's doing things wrong based on whose judgment? Jake's? Why is Jake necessarily? Why is his opinion that what he should do the correct one? You know, if he had listened to Jake at the end, Jake would be dead. And so I think it's very much, you know, that learning, becoming an adult. And if you think back to Avatar 1, Jake doesn't really listen to anyone. He does what he wants to do, and that's why things go the way that they go. And now that Natayam is gone, Loak is the older son. Loak is the heir to the Sully family, and he is the potential next chief and clan leader. I think he's becoming his own person, and that payoff of him constantly doing the wrong thing by Jake's standards and then saving him in that final "I see you" just like hits. Like it's so earned. It's such a powerful moment when Jake finally connects with him, that it just feels so justified that, you know, he was rebellious this whole time. And like you said, Michael, like that's how we were as kids, you know, not listening to our parents.
Yeah, I want to talk about one of my favorite sequences because, you know, I think another big complaint about the movie is the second act might be a little draggy. There's a lot of like, you know, training montages, but for me, there was a lot of set pieces that were dispersed out well enough that like I never was bored. And one of my favorite ones in the whole movie is when these mean old bullies bring him out beyond the reef and trick him into calling for the shark and then abandoning him. And this whole thing was like, I was like on the edge of my seat. Even the second time when I knew what happened, I was like, my hands were sweating. I thought this was really well done.
Hearing him gasping for air, terrifying. Like, oh my gosh, biggest fear of mine for sure.
Yeah, when he kept, you know, like crawling backwards into that hole, and then I was just like, oh my god, like where is he going to go? What's happening here? He's going to run out of air. Really edge of my seat. I do wish that we saw the shark creature again later. I wish that there was some sort of connection of like in Avatar 1 where the Thanator, the leopard sort of works with the Neytiri in the final battle. I wish there was some sort of thing like that here. But god, what a cool creature, what a cool sequence. So many amazing sequences all throughout the film.
These creature designs are insane.
Yeah, it's really even, you know, I really love when we get the first look at his whale buddy. You know, it's very similar to Phantom Menace. There's always a bigger fish, and I literally said that in the scene. My favorite thing about this sequence is, and I've talked about this before on the podcast, but it's one of my favorite storytelling suspense techniques. And the best example comes from Indiana Jones. It's the yes but. Right, where Indiana Jones, when the boulder's coming after him, you know, for instance, he grabs the idol, but the boulder comes after him. He gets through the closing door, but he left his hat. He had to grab his hat. He finally gets away from the boulder, but there's the natives outside trying to kill him, right? It's this constant like flow of like, yes, you're escaping, but things just got worse. And I felt like this was a very good example of that, where like it's like the whole time, especially when he's climbing through the reef, it's like, okay, he got to a new section, but that dude just bit the reef open. He's after you again. And then even like he gets out and you think he gets away, and then you see the shark, and it's like, oh no. And then after that, the whale comes and saves him, and you think he's finally fine, but he drowns, you know? And it's like that, you know, kind of rambling here, but that I feel like that is like basically a textbook example of how to build suspense, and I thought it was really well executed.
Oh, all day long. I mean, James Cameron's very first film, Piranhas, is a horror like water film. Like everyone says James Cameron is action stuff, but he can do horror and he can do suspense very well. He knows how to do those tropes, and he knows how to play on those beats. Just edge of your seat stuff, and especially the 3D and how visual everything was there. You know, I was crawling back in my seat with Loak. Yeah.
So, Alex, I'm going to throw it to you for this one. I want to talk about the brothers and sisters of the water people. You're way better at the terminology, but the whales. I want to talk about the whales tokens here. Yes. And specifically, do you know the main whale's name? The main tokens?
Pyokin?
Better than I could have come up with. Alex, speak on what do you think of this element of the movie?
I loved it. Like I loved that something that we have here on Earth, where we have, you know, dolphins and whales and stuff, who we, you know, science shows that they are so intelligent, that became a real device here and real character. I think it was really interesting, the natural progression from Avatar 1, where we see Neytiri have this deep bond with her Ikran, the Banshee, and the Metkayina people have such an even deeper bond with their creatures, the tokens, the whales. And you know, there's that beautiful scene where they're all dancing and singing together, and they're all tattooed and all the markings. I just think the tokens are fantastic. I think really, really cool creatures. When he goes inside his mouth, I was like, what is happening here? This is so weird. But it all just makes sense. Like everything about these creatures makes sense. They're so weird, but also very, you feel like, yeah, that could exist. Why not? You know, there's nothing too terrible, too strange about it. It felt a little Finding Nemo, where Dory and Nemo goes inside the whale. But it all just felt familiar and natural, and just, I think the Tolkien being a sentient being and having a voice just worked really well.
They felt like actual characters. Like at first I was like, why is he talking to him? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And then as we progress, we learn more about their history, their connections they have. And I was destroyed during the hunting scene. And there was only a few scenes before that of us learning about them as species. And those are my favorite scenes, when you see the Na'vi connecting with the Tolkiens and seeing that bond really grow. It's a memorizing. I mean, there's a scene where Kiri is walking outside. She hates it there, you know, she's always picked on. She doesn't feel like anyone's with her. And she sees that scene of everyone just bonding with them. And it was just amazing. Like I think those are like the best scenes of this movie.
That whale hunting scene, I mean, oh my gosh, one of the most profound things I've seen in cinema, start to finish. I mean, what was it, about 5-10 minute sequence, just gut wrenching, so beautifully done, so real to today and in our planet Earth of what goes on. I'm so uncomfortable and cringe and sad, and Michael, what did you think?
I used that scene as my bathroom break on my second viewing. Because it's so, yes, it is beautiful, but like I could not watch it again. I was like, I can't go through this. So I was like, if there's any scene that I just don't want to like subject myself to, it's that one. And I think it's a testament to how powerful, how dark, and how real it is, that like I don't even want to look at it, right? I do want to say, like, and this is one of my favorite things about Avatar. You get this a lot in the first one, you get a lot in this one. the brain goo is like such a throwaway, like deep sci-fi mechanic that like, you know, they didn't need to include that, but it like just helps build out the world so much more. And like it just really lays out why the sky people are even there, and like why these creatures are so important, why they're so smart. Like it like explains like 10 different things in the movie, and also it's like not even that big of a deal. And like, you know, some of my favorite sci-fi films like Dune, like Blade Runner, there'll be like a little mechanic that's like so smart, but it's not like the point of the movie. And that's what I love about sci-fi films so much, and what they did here with the eternal life goo that they pull from the whale's brain.
James Cameron at
very,
his
very
best.
aliens.
Oh, for sure.
Yes.
His world building, how he knows how to establish a universe, like it just screams in this movie. And I think the Tolkien is like the pivotal point for this, like just the bondage, everything about them.
Yeah, like that whole whaling sequence, it really doesn't serve purpose to the larger plot of The Way of Water, but like you said, Michael, it builds the world, it establishes why we care about these tokens so much. And so when, you know, that final payoff of the Tolkien jumping and landing on the boat and all that stuff, you really feel like, okay, like let this dude, you know, fuck shit up. I just blown away by the whole sequence. It really is just fantastic.
So I want to talk about the scientist in particular. The main one hated him. Obviously, he's the worst. But then there's the second one that, like, I wish we got a little bit more from him, because I was like, it almost seemed like they were setting him up to like turn on these guys, because he clearly cared more about the animals than they did. But then he just kind of like died in the whole thing. So I was a little disappointed by that. I wanted to see the second scientist get his revenge. But you know, my favorite shot in the history of cinema is that man's arm getting ripped off by the whale. I mean, just incredible. Like
Out of the blue, I did not see that
see that.
gore coming here at all. I was like, what?
Like, there were 2 times, okay, maybe 3 times in all of movies where I've stood up out of my seat and cheered. One was in game with Cap and the hammer. One was when Kylo kills Snoke, and then right here when they cuts the arm off. I literally had a like physical reaction. I was like, yes. So yeah, I loved it.
I did not expect that much score for a PG-13. I think a lot of scenes throughout this movie really pushed the edge of that kind of rating, and good, because I think, you know, I think a lot of the fans from the first movie, you know, we've grown up over the last 13 years. So I feel like this movie for sure has matured a little bit with its audience.
Yeah, it was just right. And then I think the other sort of gory scene is at Nateum's death, when you see Loak with his hand and it's just dripping in blood. And that right there, that frame rate and the 3D is very clear. It's very in your face.
So on the nose, the blood was literally on his hands.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I really like that in a dark way, I guess. Where do we go next? Is there any other characters you guys want to touch on? Anything that steps out? I mean, I got a couple more
Rhea.
things.
I love Rhea, the daughter of the Metcaina leader. She's fantastic. I love that she is the first person who really opens up the water world to us. You know, she's the one who dives in the water, and that's when we get that first fantastic shot of the sort of aquarium-esque feel. I think she's really cool. I loved that relationship with Loak developing. I think that she's going to be really, really powerful and strong and have this sort of potential rivalry with Neytiri coming up here. I just loved her. I thought she was fascinating.
She was great. I mean, we saw her just right away saving Jake's family. Like, you saw her throughout the movie, just taking them in as one of her own. And I think just that alone just proves how great of a character she is, how great the actress did. Just awesome character all around.
It's going to be weird to say, because, like, you know, it's an alien creature, but like, one of my favorite shots in this movie is when Loak and her lock eyes. It's the first shot we get of her coming out of the water. Mm-hmm. That was like candy for the eyes. The way she looked, it was so stunning. And like, like from the physical alien appearance, but also like one of the biggest feats of this movie, and this is an issue that I have with a lot of different things. I think there's two things that are a big tell away for bad CGI. Number one, it's explosions. Number two, it's water. And never once did I have any issue with any of the water shots. And like, and it's not just like, waves, but it's like how water looks on people's skin, and like the way she like glistened with the water on her. I was like, I've never like that one shot. It's like one of the most beautiful things I've seen in my life, let alone a movie. Like I was just floored at that.
Even the hair.
It felt
hair.
very Daniel Craig in Casino Royale, like coming out of the ocean. I was like, okay, here she is. And if you look closely, her eyes and their eyes, the Mechaina people, they blink horizontal, like fish, which is kind of cool. So it's nice that all the Na'vi sort of have these different variations. We saw their wider arms and the flat tails, but that entrance was spot on.
I did not pick up on the blinking. That's okay.
I will thank TikTok. I did not see it, but TikTok showed me it.
I already am planning on seeing it for a third time next week. So like,
it's very clear in that exact scene when she walks out and she blinks at him. Her eye goes this like left to right.
Wow, that's awesome. Amazing.
Yeah, Rhea was great. I want to ask you because again, when it comes to Marvel and Star Wars, sometimes I have to like come up with a headcanon to explain things that don't really make sense. And there was one big thing that didn't make sense to me here at the end. It was that her family kind of disappeared in the battle.
Yeah.
While her presence never really drifted. It was almost like they kind of gave up looking for her, but they just kind of vanished at some point, and we never saw them again. And I was like trying to like explain this in my head, like, were they like fighting a different faction somewhere else? Were they helping the whales get like, I don't know. Did you guys have any thoughts on this?
I felt that too. It seemed a little bit weird, especially since they were all going to war with them at the same time. Like great shot to see them all fighting while they're all on the rafts as well. Like I love that scene. It was fantastic. Similar shot to when the Banshees were, and going in on all the helicopters and whatnot from the first movie. But yeah, I agree. They just seem to like disappear. I don't know. I loved how her mother, pregnant and all, without a doubt, ready to fight.
I did not notice. I was so entrenched in following Loak and Jake that I just didn't even notice that they were gone. And I've since seen, some of the reactions of people noticing that the Mechaina do kind of just disappear at the end of the battle. Like you're saying, headcanon, to me, it makes sense in a way because they are not warriors. They are peaceful people. That's like the very first thing that Runal says when they meet Jake and the Sullys. I sort of take their presence in the battle as, okay, we're here for Jake. And then when Jake and it looks like the ship is destroyed, that they're like, cool, we did our thing. And because the final 30 minutes is very Jake saving his two kids, it's less a big battle at that point, right? It's like the battle's won, there's just this other little thing that's going on still. That is very clear, I guess, headcanon for me and making sense of it, but I really didn't notice that they were gone.
I think the reason I noticed it so much was I'm looking at the name here. I think it's Tanawari, the chief of the people, played by Cliff Curtis, who I love, by the way. I was like really enthralled with like just his appearance alone, like because the people of Pandora typically, from what we've seen of the forest people, they're very lean. This guy's like built. Like I was ready to see this guy like slam someone's head into a rock. Like I wanted to see him fight a little bit more, and we got a little bit of it. Like, there's some good shots of him like throwing spears. Actually, this is like one of my favorite techniques that like they used really well in the first one, and like they don't show a lot of shots of the Avatar side by side with humans. There was a couple in Avatar, but like it's really much focused on in the very end when I think it was Natiri's brother who like landed in the helicopter, and you just get that scale comparison of like the people of Pandora versus the humans and how much bigger they truly are. And what I loved what they did, I think they showcased this really well. I think it is a little bit in the first one, but everything from the spears to Natiri's arrows, like when you see them on them, they look like normal arrows, but when you see them pierce a person, it's like that's like a rod going through you. That's not just an arrow. That's like if you get shot by one of those, you're done. It's gonna take your leg off or something.
Yeah, the Navi are like 10 feet tall. They're big height difference here. You see it again when Neytiri sort of has that Sute moment in this one where she goes absolutely bananas on these humans, and just rage kills everyone. I love watching her fight. It's fantastic.
It would have been fun to see people like use their forearms as like a weapon, because you could see they were like clapping at it when they were like chanting. I was like, oh wow, they're just so big. It's so funny. I loved it. What did you get? I have a quick question for you guys. What did you guys think of like the final battle being a little bit more low scale? Did it like was it? Did you like it more? Did you hate it more? Like I loved it. I thought it was really good.
Yeah,
Can you elaborate, sorry, on what exactly you mean there?
Like it was only focused, like it wasn't a full on war, I guess you could say. It was such a
Oh,
smaller
like more
battle.
intimate. Okay.
Yeah, especially compared to the last movie.
Well, I think that it makes sense in that like there are so many more movies, and I think we're gonna get those big battle things. It's almost like you can't have a big battle at the end of every movie. So I kind of like the use of like kind of like you said, it's more intimate, it's more personal. There's like characters we're following and their relationships with the characters that's like really important that might kind of get lost in like a massive battle. So, especially when we see like the fortress that the humans are building on Pandora, like I can only imagine what that battle is going to look like when they infiltrate that bad boy. So I think it's the kind of thing like we're getting there, but I think this worked for the characters involved and to tell the story because there was so much story within the battle itself, like between the relationships between Quaritch and Spider, and obviously like the revenge stuff between all of them. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was a good progression. There was, 10, 15 minutes of sort of bigger exterior battle, and then it really just goes in for about that 30-minute intimate sequence. I thought it played really well, and I think it made sense, and it still felt like the stakes were really high. And James Cameron just does not miss a beat with an action sequence.
Alex, I know you wanted to talk about some comparisons to Titanic, and I'm curious to see if you have anything outside of kind of the obvious, which is the end. A lot of people inside of a ship that's sinking, which I totally got on the spot. But yeah, if you wanted to cover some of that.
Yeah, I mean, Way of Water partially is Titanic too. Like it's there, and I think James Cameron he knew it from the start, and he said we're just gonna go all in with this. I don't necessarily know if I have anything too out of left field, but there are a few of them that really stuck out to me. Is one, the actual reason why the aircraft carrier ship sinks is it breaches on the coral reef and gets hit, which is like the iceberg. And it immediately cuts to the control room being like closing compartments 2 and 3, they're flooding, which is exactly the same compartments of Titanic. I'm a huge Titanic nerd as well. The ship, studied it, all of that. Like that immediately just spoke to me. The Neytiri and Took in the hallway and the water filling up is Jack and Rose in the lower E deck. Like it's the same shot. It's fantastic. The ship going upright and them climbing over it, all those images are so there. I just was geeking out watching. I was like, oh, look. It's Titanic. But yeah, I don't know if there's any other ones that you guys noticed.
I was gonna say I haven't seen Titanic like through and through. I've seen like scenes of it. I've seen it on cable a few times, like throughout a couple hours.
You gotta watch it.
So a lot of people making this comparison, I just didn't see as much, only because I didn't really grow up watching Titanic as much as others. So don't have too much to add to this, unfortunately.
So not necessarily that, just in the era of the actual ship sinking, I wanted to mention another one of my favorite shots where Neytiri and Took, they're running through like a cafeteria type area, and as the ship is turning, and like as they're running, the room, it's almost out of like Inception. The room is rotating, and they switch from running on the floor to running on the ceiling, and then the way the water changes, I was like, I knew it made sense, but I was like, is that how gravity works? Like it was blowing my mind. Just really impressive scene.
Which now, as you're saying that to me, feels like Jack and Rose running through in the plates, falling off of the cabinet, right? And the ship is going down.
Yeah.
Because I felt that same way when Loak was with Pyokan and he was on the fin, and then they reversed the shot as he was like touching the top of the water or whatever.
Yeah, I tried to avoid a lot of the trailers for this, and I'm glad that I did, because I knew nothing about the plot, but also that shot blew me away in the theaters. And then I went back and watched the trailer after, and that's like a big shot in the trailer. I was like, damn, like that was like one of the coolest shots in the movie. That's right there. So, but yeah, okay. Well, what's next? What else can we talk about here? Am I missing anything?
We haven't talked about Quaritch at all, which
Yeah,
I think
true. That's kind
we
of...
should. I mean, he is our villain, through and through here. What did you guys think? Did you like this approach of bringing him back? Again, it's very similar to the Kiri situation. For me, it was a little uncomfortable at first, and I sort of grew into it, and I was like, okay, I had no doubts that it was logical and that it made sense in their world. But I was coming into this thinking, okay, there's going to be a new villain. Something else is going on here. It's not going to be like a person, or an avatar, I guess. But yeah,
Go for it.
Well, I kind of same with you, Alex. I was very like, I was like, this is the thing here. This is the villain. But I think it really worked in that like we had like a previous relationship with this character, so like we were already invested in like how he felt about the Na'vi and how the Na'vi felt about him. So like it kind of skipped a lot of the story building we had to do. So I appreciated that, but also I thought the story with him and Spider, like, it's just such a smart connection there that like it all worked really well. And again, it's one of those things, it's like, here's just like a random piece of like sci-fi advancement that we're getting, which is like kind of throwaway but awesome at the same time. I will say, like, my thought at the end of this movie was like, when he like survives and gets away, I'm like how do we make the next movie without the plot being exactly the same? Same villain wanting to do the same thing. I think there's some interviews that have kind of changed my mind on that, but it's interesting that like it's looking like he's the villain of the entire franchise. He's like the Palpatine, right? So Zach, how do you feel about Corey?
I was gonna say, I hope they just give him like one more movie, and then that can be it with him. Because I remember hearing early rumors that Stephen Lang was returning. So I was just, my biggest question was just, how was he going to do it? Like, we saw him die. So I guess making a clone of himself, pretty much being the exact same character, makes sense. Like you mentioned, Alex, like it fits this world. Like that wasn't too much for me to like grasp on. It was the fact that we just got so much less screen time as we did the first one. I know we like you mentioned, Michael, we had that previous relationship with him in the first one, but they kept making scenes like he's like, oh, I'm not that man, that's a different man. So they're like establishing a little bit that he's very different than his like previous life or his clone or whatever. So I felt like if they were gonna do that, they should have built him up a little bit more than they did throughout the movie. I don't know. It's just I didn't care he wasn't in the movie as much, to be honest, because I had so much more fun with the Telecon, especially during the second act. That was like my favorite part of the movie. But it just, I don't know, it just felt a little off to me with his whole character and kind of the direction they're going with it.
So I had like a very different thought process moving forward here. I see this very clearly that like he's going to be a hero moving forward.
A redemption.
Like he's going to have this relationship with Spider. And if you look at Quaritch in 1 and now 2, and Jake in 1 and 2. Quaritch's story in 2 is mirrored from Jake in 1. You know, he enters into his new body, he flips out, he learns the Na'vi way as Jake does, and he starts to see the world, and he has compassion and empathy by the end. You know, like he really grows as a character. And I've got to think that Spider saving him in the way he does and then leaving him is going to have a big effect on him. And at the end of the day, like Quaritch is fully Navi in a sense now. Like he doesn't have a human body to return to. So he's stuck in that, and he might be fighting the Navi on behalf of the humans, but it's just going to turn on him if he stays that way, because he's trying to eviscerate and eliminate all the Navi, and he is now one of them. And I think there's going to be this moment of him and Jake working together in some capacity over a greater threat, because Quaritch has shown that he has respect for loyalty, and he does have compassion, and he has this empathetic nature to him. That I really think that he's in it for the long haul, but he's going to be here as a hero moving forward. Anti-hero, perhaps.
Do you see him connecting with Iwa, like physical connection? Like, do you?
Yeah,
I feel like
yeah.
that could be.
I think Kiri is going to be this relationship bridge and builder here. Quaritch just like makes a lot of sense to me moving forward in this film. I think his place is really earned, and I really think that there's going to be just such deep understanding here, because you see him start to learn. You know, where he says he's like, no, I want to get my Ikram the same way Jake does, and he works for it. He doesn't take the easy way out. And so much of his beginning arc of this movie is him talking about we have to be the Na'vi, we have to think like them, we have to learn their language, and you can't do all of that learning and not have some appreciation for who these people are, or who these Na'vi are. I don't think that the third film was going to be him, the villain again. Like that just feels really boring, to be honest. And I hope that's not where we're going.
Yeah, so I think it would be interesting to see him take a turn, and like actually the way you explain it, I would prefer that. It's hard for me to imagine it would be soon, like maybe like especially because like some of the final things we get him saying to Jake is like, I'm going to kill your whole family. Like the passion he has against him is so extreme, and like it's hard to imagine he's going to take that turn. I will say, Zach, you kind of touched on like how the character is slightly different. If I were to again kind of headcanon this, I would say that like while he didn't experience his own death, he realizes the way he went about things resulted in his own death. Therefore, he might have to take a different approach. And maybe that's going to be, you know, he's kind of like a cat with 9 lives. Like he almost died here and he lived. So I wonder again, kind of like maybe that is like the reset point where he kind of reevaluates how he was handling things. And maybe he changes again, and kind of like the way Alex expressed. So that would be interesting.
Yeah, because Quaritch in 1 dies in this moment. This is that death, right? Like he doesn't get out of it. And this one, he survives because he has grown as a being. And he lives because his son, Spider, was like, I'm compassionate enough. Like I built a relationship with you that it's gonna pay off, right? You know, it's that he's put in the work moment. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting. I agree. It's not gonna be an immediate switch, but there's gonna be ramifications of all of the fallout of this battle, which we don't get in this film. And what happens next? You know, he's gonna go back and regroup. But he's got this sort of whole other life now, and he is an outcast at Bridgehead City as a little avatar walking around, you know?
Got me excited now.
Well, okay, so we can come back to some of the stuff in the movie if things come up, but I do want to start to use some of the tail end of this podcast to talk about predictions, because Alex and we've been texting back and forth a lot about some of the stuff. And actually, Zach, are you familiar with the rumored titles? Or I guess they're like they're not greenlit yet, but the ones that James Cameron wants?
Yeah, I was gonna say I think the next one's like Seed Bearer. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And I don't know off the top of my head the other two, but I think I've for sure seen them before.
Well, I kind of wanted to, because I kind of got Alex's takes on it. We can kind of repeat ourselves here too, Alex. But Alex, I want you to throw out the titles to Zach, and I want Zach to tell us what we think they mean, because we had lots of conversations about this, and I would love to see Zach's takes.
Okay, so Avatar 3, 4, and 5 titles exist in rumor. James Cameron has not confirmed any of them, but he has acknowledged these titles are, being thought of. Obviously, Avatar 3 is filmed and is basically done. It's just editing. So that film probably has a title. And so for Avatar 3, it appears to be The Seed Bearer. Avatar 4 seems to be called The Tolkien Rider. And the 5th one seems to be The Quest for Awa.
Well, let's start with the Seed Bearer. Zach, what does that mean to you? Anything? I mean, do you have a theory?
I feel like they're just gonna dive way more into. I feel like this is gonna be Kiri's story, for sure. Like I think they're gonna focus way more on her character than they did in this movie, and possibly just dive deeper into her connection with Ewa than kind of hints that we got in this movie. Because I felt like a lot of it was just unresolved, or like a lot of it was just kind of up in the air with her as a character. So I could see that for sure, kind of moving forward with this next sequel.
So that's interesting because Alex, one thing we talked about that I thought that the titles also could correspond. It doesn't fit perfectly, but I think they could correspond to each of the kids. I think the Quest for Ewa works a little better for Kira, which and then Seed Bearer, like that's the one I'm like I don't know if any of the kids fit that. But Alex, you had an interesting thought about that. What do you think the Seed Bearer is?
Yeah, so I don't necessarily know precisely that title with it, but in Avatar 2 The Way of Water we meet Rono, which played by Kate Winslet. She is the shaman of the Metkaina people, and she's pregnant, and there's a lot of dialogue and focus on her being pregnant in this film that has no payoff. There's no reason for her to be pregnant, because the one time when she shouldn't go and fight and Tomowari is like, no, stay, she's like, no, I'm gonna come fight, so why is she pregnant, right? Like that's got to pay off, and I think the imagery there is quite clear. I don't know what that is going to mean per se, but I think that child is going to be important, and I think that is the Seed Bearer. Whatever happens as a result of that pregnancy, she's very pregnant as well. Like I think the next film is going to be her pregnancy very early on. I'm sure we've all seen the shot of Kate Winslet perhaps underwater, and she's got like the big wings and in the motion capture. That's not in Avatar 2. Okay, that is a shot from Avatar 3, which was filmed side by side. So there's some big Kate Winslet content coming in the next one, and that is where my mind is going to. That this is where that comes from.
Interesting. So the next one, Avatar 4, is the Tolkien Rider, right? And again, this was the one that kind of tipped me off to like maybe all the titles connect to the kids, because obviously I think that connects very well to Loak. It's kind of interesting though, because I know again 2 and 3 shot side by side. There have been rumors that they were possibly considered to be one film. So it's weird that we go from the Seed Bearer to the Tolkien Rider, which kind of implies that we'll probably be very heavy in the water world still in 4. So I don't know, Zach, do you have any thoughts on that?
I was gonna say, do you guys like being more in this water world environment as compared to the forest in the first movie?
I kind of like a mixture of both. I was actually thinking this earlier. I think I would be a Omatakaya person in the forest. Like I love the water, but I feel like I would be with my Ikran, I'd be flying, I'd be in the jungle. I like that world a little better in terms of just it's a little more interesting. And I hope that we're not just entirely in the water. Love the water, it's beautiful and all the creatures and stuff. but I like a good mix up.
Yeah, it's not necessarily that I don't like them. It's like I'm ready to see more biomes from Pandora. Like I feel like each movie we've kind of explored a different area, and I think it would be cool to get a brand new one. I think I'm with the water people, and I say that I like the forest. My issue is the heights. I don't like flying in an airplane, so I'm not going to like flying on an unpredictable animal. So I think I would prefer swimming with the fish for sure.
Oh, yeah, I'm the same way. I was a swimmer growing up, and I love scuba diving, so see people all the way. Well, Kyle, my co-host to my podcast, he mentioned possibly even exploring like an Arctic biome or even like a volcanic biome. Like, there's just so much they can expand on just from this movie alone.
Yeah, John Lando, the other executive producer for Avatar, has said that like every movie is going to introduce a new biome into the world of Pandora. So like we are going to get something new. I do think though that the Met Hyena, the water people, are going to be sort of the structure though, where the home base moving forward. Which we'll get to that when we talk predictions for 3. But I think we're going to have a lot of water as the base, and then they're going to go out from there.
Gotcha. So the next one here is the Quest for Iwa, right? That's the last one. I'm not missing one. Okay. Quest for Iwa. That's an interesting one because, again, I think, Iwa, while may have some physical manifestations in the world, seems to much more be like a god. So it's interesting that there seems to be like a way to find Iwa. So I don't really know what this means. And again, I think this one, if anything, probably would be Kiri's movie with her connection with Iwa. But do you guys have any thoughts on what that could mean?
I got a small theory, and this kind of came up to me in the middle of this podcast, only because this is a similar plot line to a book series I read when I was younger called The Lorien Legacies. It's like the IN number 4 series, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like, well, maybe I don't feel like, because James Cameron states they're going to show Earth. Like, why go back to Earth? Why take us away from such a beautiful, beautiful world like Pandora and bring us to Earth? Could it be that Iwa is going to be saving Earth? Like, is she going to be brought? Can she be expanded across universes?
Yeah, I think that the Quest for Iwa, I think, is if that is the title, I love it as a final title. I think it's really profound. But I see there's obviously all the Earth and human elements so far in the first 2 films is all about Earth is dying. And I think that there's perhaps this moment where, in this world that they've created, maybe our Earth once had like an Awa and it's just died off. And that is potentially going to happen to Pandora. Maybe something happens in 4 where Awa is threatened and maybe disappears and the planet starts to suffer. And they have to like bring Awa back. Like maybe that's what's happening here. There's so many different things because James Cameron just can do anything and the world is so big. The Earth sequences, I don't think that the entire film is going to be Earth. I think it is going to be perhaps 30 minutes out of a 3-hour film. We'll have some Earth scenes, like what's happening there. I deep dived on TikTok today about people's theories and predictions and was like, yep, I like that. That's something I agree with. So there's many different things that could happen. Yeah.
So I feel like I didn't know that they had like confirmed that Earth was coming, but I did theorize that would be interesting. I also think it's a little risky. My immediate thought is like the Smurfs go to New York, like kind of like the comedy of a blue creature and and obviously I'm kind of kidding when I say that. Like, I think it's all about the execution of what Earth actually looks like. Like they said, the planet is dying. So, how does that actually look? I think that will really, build out, that world a little bit. But I kind of think like, again, like and there have been a lot of interviews and comments about like how grand and how shocking and how things change so much. So again, I think like going to a whole new planet would be very shocking, but also like, you know, what can we get from space, right? Like I think Alex, I talked about with you, like maybe Kira is kidnapped, taken to Earth to be like studied, and then like maybe Jake Sully and friends have to like steal one of their ships and go to Earth to save her, and that is kind of like the quest. But also like, what does that look like? Do we get like, you know, like something out of like Gravity in the Avatar world from that venture from Pandora to Earth? I think that would be something really cool to tackle as well.
I definitely think that plot point of somehow a Na'vi gets brought back to Earth could happen, and could make sense. I don't think we're gonna have, or that we're gonna be spending our time in an Avatar film on a spaceship hanging out. Like I think that's not gonna happen. Hopefully it's not like too spoilery. Again, I don't know anything, but James has said that in the fourth film, page 35 precisely, there is a time jump that is going to happen. And I think that is where the kids are going to age up, because 3 is filmed right with 2, so they don't age out of their current looks. That perhaps that's when this return to Earth happens, maybe, because you know we know that they go to cryo sleep and it's a 5.5-year journey. Maybe that's what's happening there. I also see this world where maybe there's like a reporter, like maybe, you know, not everyone on Earth is bad, right? Like not every human wants to just kill all the Na'vi. There's going to be good humans. Maybe there's Pandora propaganda and somehow there's a journalist, like something like that happens. I think we're going to stay mostly on Pandora though. You know, James loves this world. He has put so much into this, and I think he wants to show off everything that Pandora can be, moving forward.
Awesome. Well, that's all the titles there. I want to dive into like more specifically, you know, from the things that happened in this movie. Do we have like solid predictions? And we kind of touched on it a little bit. Solid predictions for Avatar 3. Like how do we pick this up directly from where we left off, and what does that look like? I'll make Zach talk first.
Oh boy. I was gonna say, I think we're definitely gonna I think we're gonna see Loax with that Survivor's Guild. I think we're gonna see a lot of his character alone just progress into a similar character as Nateum was. For sure. Especially having that realization that, I guess you could say, essentially he got his brother killed. Like he just gonna develop that sense of leadership and possibly develop into a much bigger character than what he was moving forward.
I see that happening, but I actually think that 3 is going to be really Natiri focused. I think that she's really going to struggle here, losing her son. I think she is not a water Metkaina as much as they've been indoctrinated into the clan. She still flies her Ikran in the battle. She does not learn the way of the new water creature that Jake rides. And I think she's going to want to go home to Home Tree. You know, Moat, her mom, is still alive. As far as we know, through the end of Avatar 2, she's in the beginning of Avatar 2. I think she's going to want to go home. I think there's going to be a big rift with Jake and Neytiri, and I think that is going to be what Avatar 3 is about, is their relationship perhaps really fracturing under the weight of guilt, Jake accepting Spider, Neytiri almost killing him. That's a thing. Side note, do we think she would have killed him in that moment?
I felt so.
I felt it 100%. I was like, she was ready to do it.
I mean, I thought she did. She like literally sliced his throat, right? Like there was blood. I was like, whoa. I guess she didn't go deep, but
yeah.
The way that she describes him as an alien, and just that one scene that she just says like he needs to be with his own kind, which is ironic because Jake. But
Yeah, I think she's out of there very quickly. Neytiri, I think she goes right back to the forest, and I think they're going to be separate for a bit. And I think the seed bearer is going to be some sort of bridge building device to get either them back together or what's going to happen there. All of these films are about family, front first, and family's not always good. There's fractures, there's things that happen, deaths or relationships souring, and so I think that might be what we get from this.
So I'm going to go a little bold here with my prediction, because I'm trying to think, how do we tie in another biome if there's going to be one? And I don't know what my thought is, like, because here's my thing. I think there's going to be a Na'vi civil war. I think there's going to be another biome that doesn't like anything going on with not just the water people, but like their connection with humans when it comes to the scientist Norm and the other guy, and then also Spider. Like they do see a lot of good in the humans, and I could see where they go to somewhere else and they're like, we don't like this. Like, and not only do we not like it, but we want to eradicate all humans. And I think if we're gonna have like some sort of like warring faction amongst the people of Pandora, I think it would be interesting if like the quote unquote bad guys were from the lava area, and again, I don't know what that looks like. Again, the water people have fins, what do they have, like hardened rock skin that like help them live in that type of environment? So I think it would be really cool. And again, I think that's something that might connect Jake and Quaritch, where like if there is another biome that's like very much against somebody like Spider, and maybe they're trying to kill Spider, I think that's something that they can come together on, kind of like your father and stepdad getting together to like watch you at your soccer game or something. I think they can find some like parental bond there that would kind of like Alex has said, make Quaritch a little bit more of a good guy. So
yeah, I fully see a Na'vi civil war or some sort of resentment over everyone always trying to help Jake and his half human hybrid family. Obviously, the Metkayina people have gone past it, and they're locked in. So we know that's one strong force, and they have a relationship with the Omaticaya. But there's a new clan leader there, right? Jake gives his title away, and who knows? Maybe he's going to be like, "Look, we don't want this mess again. We lost our home tree. We don't want to be involved in these fights." And that could tie in with Neytiri going back, and is she welcome in there, and what are the costs of that? I also feel like that Bridgehead City, I think it's called Bridgehead City, is a really fascinating place because we don't really see a lot about it. What is it? What's in there? And like, I would love some sort of heist-esque movie of having to like break into this fortress that we see. I think that there's so much potential here, right? I do want a fire biome though. I can see the poster. I can see we've just had blue. I can see this bright red Avatar trailer popping up in a year and a half, and these amazing fire visuals, and James Cameron somehow putting heat warmers in the IMAX seats, who knows what he could do with fire.
Yeah, I would love to see a Na'vi civil war. I think that makes the most sense kind of moving forward, especially having humans or humanoid, I don't know, clones, whatever, in this movie. It seems like it makes the most sense. And all kind of following Jake's story alone, a lot of them have been very accepting kind of moving forward. He even when going to the sea people, like he was worried, but I think he had a hunch that they were still going to accept him and help him out. So, and then when he's gathering all the clans in the first movie, like a lot of them have been very willing and accepting of him, and like just very friendly. So I feel like for sure there's going to be a clan that is complete opposite.
Yeah. Well, all right, guys. I mean, I honestly, I don't want to like tire you guys out. I could talk about this movie forever. But I do want to ask, is there anything else you guys want to touch on? Just in
I mean,
the world of Avatar in general?
there's so many many things. Shout out to James Horner, rest in peace. No longer obviously with us, and the amazing score that he did for Avatar 1. And I think the score they did for 2 and the way that they incorporated so many elements was really, really powerful. I mean, just another part of this technologically amazing film, right? Like the sound as well is just fantastic. The music's so rich and deep. Um, it truly is just like one of those films that just takes your breath away. No pun intended. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could talk about anything forever with it. So
I'm dying to see a documentary. I've been telling Michael this. I need to see how they develop this new mocap technology to withstand water and look as clear and flawless as it did. Like, give me
there is stuff out there that you can find. I can also try and send you some clips and stuff. And there's a whole, if you watch Avatar 1, there's a full like hour and a half documentary about how they did that and the process for the first one. And I did a lot of research into why 2 took so long. You know, they had to develop this underwater motion capture system, which they did not even have for the first one. So like in Avatar 1, when Jake jumps off the cliff when he's being chased and he goes in the water, that water scene after seeing 2 is really jank. That was filmed him not in water. He's just like walking around in the production studio with ropes on him. And all the breath holding that they do so that there's no air bubbles. That was the biggest thing. That's why they have to do all the free diving, because they can't have air bubbles because they can't CGI them out really well. There's a lot of stuff you can deep dive on Twitter for sure, and find clips and interviews. And Fandango actually has a really good, about like 45-minute interview and process with James and the whole team about how they went about this. I mean, this movie was filmed 5 years ago. Like that is wild to me. I just can't wait for more.
You catch me diving down a giant rabbit hole. Do you think they're going to share this technology? Like, because I look at the volume, huge thing that Disney did with The Mandalorian. They've since, expanded it to MCU movies, and they've even let like Warner Bros. Use it for the Batman. Like, could we see this potentially getting used again? Like, I know we just got Wakanda Forever with the Talokan. Like, I don't know.
See, I feel like, typically I would say that in Hollywood and among studios, I think people are very willing to, like, kind of like you said with the volume. I think there's proof in the pudding that, like, they're all kind of in it together and they're willing to share this stuff with each other. It's kind of hard to I think it's also hard to keep these secrets because you'll have production members working for different studios, and it's like, you don't want one person to like sign an NDA and like how, it's like there's a lot of hoops you'd have to go through to like keep it a secret. Like I feel like they're willing to share this kind of stuff. With that being said, if there's any person in the world who wouldn't share, it's James Cameron.
Yes.
So
yeah,
not to hate on my boy.
I could see him holding on to some stuff through like 3. Like give himself a couple years while he's already probably developing the next thing, and who knows what that is. And Michael, I think you said it right. I don't think it's about necessarily keeping things from other filmmakers, but everyone knows how he filmed Avatar 1 by now, and it's been 13 years since. No one else has still really been able to really do motion capture that good. Endgame, Thanos is not the best CGI I've ever seen, and that's still Disney. These are both Disney products, so he can give this technology away, but James himself just has like that touch, and he knows what he's doing. He has a team with him that is just Avatar through and through. And I kind of like that they have their own little team and little secrets, because it's like Christopher Nolan, right? Like they have their little world, and you want in on the secret.
Yeah, I love that. Also, just that, it's a reminder that this is a Disney movie. Like I kind of forget that at times. But with that being said, though, the fact that this is a Disney movie, 1,000%, we're gonna get an hour and a half making of documentary on Disney Plus in the coming months. 100, like Disney, like they'll do that stuff for like any TV show they do. Like every TV show they have a making of. So if for whatever reason they don't have like an actual like feature on this, that would blow my mind. So yeah, just super guys. Okay, so actually I know what I want to close on here. I know the tone. Okay, because there are people listening. I don't know if they made it this far, but people are listening that didn't like this movie as much as we did. Is there anything you can say to like somebody that is more skeptical about the world of Avatar to kind of leave the skeptics in the dust a little bit? I guess it's hard to say because it's like if you didn't like this, I mean, I don't know what you're gonna like, but
it's hard because like for me as a fan of cinema, like I would just see it even if I wasn't a fan of Avatar. I'd be a fan to see what is this technology, like what is this all about, what is the storytelling. I think just like trust film, trust the story, because it is superior in the emotional beats than Avatar 1, and I can see why people think Avatar 1 is a little bland in its storytelling. But how many superhero movies or action movies have you seen where someone's kidnapped and they save the day and like the bad guy turns good at the end? Like those tropes repeat. And I think it's about how you deliver it and what else you can do on top of that. And I think the world of Pandora is just so fascinating, especially having the sci-fi epic where the humans are kind of the bad people, is a really interesting just take. And just go and like see it. It's so beautiful, start to finish. It's the most beautiful film I've ever seen.
And say enjoy the visuals, like that. A lot of people, that's what some fans are gonna go and see. Like, don't be afraid, like just be in awe. Like the movie itself is, like you said, beautiful. It's so amazing to look at. I could honestly, the second part of this movie I could watch even longer, and some people complain that it's stretched out. Like it's just absolutely beautiful. And then you just grow to love these characters more than you did in the first one. You develop relationships, you develop an attachment towards these characters, and you really want to see them kind of move forward on with the sequels.
So I guess if I were to say anything to the skeptics, it would be hop on the freaking train, because 1 was better than 2 and 3 will be better than 2, or be 2, whatever. They're getting better each time. And I think that's the big thing, is not only are they learning about like the technology, they're advancing it, they're doing really cool things. So not only are they growing like technically, but like as the story goes, like, and I guess especially like if it, like there's very few people listening to this podcast that aren't like Marvel heads, but if you are that person, like I know a lot of people that are like, man, I wish I knew what the MCU would become so I could have hopped on board early. Now I feel like I have to watch like 28 movies or whatever to like catch up. I think this is going to be the kind of thing where people are going to be like, I wish I was on board at the beginning. And we're the pioneers. We're here. We've got our spears in the
never
sand.
got off.
Yeah. So I think I just have so much faith in this franchise. Also, I want to this is something we didn't touch on, but I think it's important. I think I want to point people to good friends of the podcast, Two Black Nerds podcast, did an incredible recap, and they talked on some stuff that like it's no place for me to really have like an opinion on, but like they pointed out some issues with some of like the racial stereotypes and how things were tackled in this movie that I think are valid, but they also backed it up by saying like there are ways to improve and fix it. And actually, that's something we talked about in the Where's Jar Jar episode as well. Like, we can have like issues with things and improve upon them. And I think that's another example of things that will continue to get better with the franchise. One final thing, I think a big hang up for a lot of people, and I'm going to call my buddy Lee out, Zach. Lee. Poor Lee. I know he's so hurt by James Cameron. James Cameron is a douchebag. I'll say it. He is. Like, the way he came after Marvel movies was unfair and false. And I guess that's another thing I want to ask you guys is, there are many people in my life where I cannot separate the art from the artist, or vice versa. But you know, I don't think super highly of James Cameron as like a personality. There's videos of him like flicking off fans, you know, like he kind of is, you know, old man screaming at cloud type guy. But you know, do you guys get any of that? Do you feel where like, you know, you don't necessarily care for James Cameron, but like you're able to recognize that like he's one of the greatest filmmakers of all time?
I mean,
Because I think
I do
that's an
not
issue for
know
people.
him,
Yeah.
right? Like, I don't know him. I can't call him up. So my experience with him is a storyteller, a director, a world builder, and I think that is unequivocally he's fantastic. I do think the Marvel comments were a little just unnecessary. You know, we all know that Avatar CGI is going to be better than
Mhm.
Marvel. Sorry, it just is. But it doesn't need to be said. No, that's not the case here. It doesn't need to be a fight here. Like we Avatar fans, so like welcome Marvel stands in, come into this space world. Who knows if it's in the multiverse? You know, like maybe that's gonna pop up. You know, it could happen, right? Like who knows?
James Cameron would have to die multiple times to be brought back as an Avatar and then die again.
They are going to Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think anyone with that amount of genius, they always have some quirks and things. Not to say it's okay, but you know, pick your battles, sort of thing. I think for me, at least.
It's hard for him not to have an ego. Like just the advancements he's done as a filmmaker, even before Avatar, but just alone with the technology, the box office, like it's hard for him not to have that kind of personality. And at this point, it's just fun to see what kind of news article he pops up today because it's just a meme. Like it's just funny to read. Like I don't take it personally or I don't get too upset anymore at this because it's just more and more uncommon. It's kind of like The Rock, you know, how there was an Instagram post where he like broke down his fence so he could get to the filming of Black Adam. Like that's what James Cameron has kind of turned into to me.
Okay, guys. Well, I think this was a really incredible podcast. I appreciate you guys so much for doing this. I know it was kind of last minute. Both of you guys stepped up. Day on like the other side of the planet here, coming in clutch. So I want to give you guys a chance to tell people where they can find you online. Zach, of course, about your podcast. You want to tell people where they can find that?
Yeah, I host a podcast called the Nerd Dose Podcast with one of my buddies from school. You can follow us on Spotify, Apple iTunes, etc., and Instagram as well. So kind of do all the updates from there.
And Alex, I know you're doing. I mean, you're TikTok star. What do you want to tell people about? Where can people find you?
Try. I'm actually just watching recent stuff pop up. I am deep in the Swift Talk, the Taylor Swift universe. So you can find me on TikTok at Reputation. And you know, if you have any theories about music and Taylor Swift, like I'm there talking things every single day. It's really been fun to like deep dive into all that and get into that world. The last couple of months, it's a lot of fun.
Zach, I don't know if you know, but like the Swifties, they have like MCU level theories out there. Like, it's intense. It's intense stuff. Alex has explained it to me. It's kind of overwhelming.
That's
Oh,
funny.
we have deep Easter eggs. Like that's a whole nother thing. I would love to do that sometime. Deep dive the MCU with Taylor Swift. Because there is a Taylor Swift cinematic universe. Like it exists. It's real. So who knows? Maybe one day. She has said she wants to be a Marvel film. So
she's directing a movie now too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
there you go.
We'll see.
I do want to I know it's getting long here, but I do have a recommendation. So if you guys want to tell people something to check out, I want to talk about a video game that I played. That if you like this world, if you like The Way of Water, if you like the island people, check out Subnautica. It is a survival game about a man who crashes on an alien planet that is mostly water. And it is very beautiful in that like he's got like a scuba suit and like he is like exploring the ocean to get pieces back to his spacecraft and basically get off this planet. But it is absolutely incredible. You know, just looking at the backyard of our StreamYard here, like just the world that is built out in Subnautica as far as like underwater worlds go, it is really impressive. And I think if people like Way of Water, they will like that video game. So that is my recommendation. Zach, do you have anything you want people to check out?
Sure. I just caught the movie called The Swimmers on Netflix. Also kind of relating to Way of the Water. Follows these two young girls traveling from Syria, third world country, to Germany. Really focuses on their refugee story, while at the same time, one of the main characters progresses into an Olympic swimmer. So I thought that movie was really well done. The cinematography was beautiful. It's on Netflix. So yeah, pretty easy to access.
Awesome. Alex, what do you got?
So I have a Avatar connection here recommendation. I cannot think of Avatar without thinking of this film because the very first time I ever saw the Avatar trailer back in the summer of 2009, the song used in the trailer was "My Name Is Lincoln" from the film The Island in 2005 with Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson. It's a Michael Bay film about human clones and surrogates for organ harvesting. It's a really fun dystopian science fiction film. The score is incredible. That's why it's used in the debut Avatar trailer, and I just always had that connection. So Sean Bean's in it. You know, there's some fun actors in there. It's worth checking out.
Sounds like an awesome cast. Okay, guys. Well, again, thank you so much for doing this. I'm going to close this out here. I like to actually, real quick, I just want to say I haven't addressed it. I wanted to do it at the top, but I didn't do it. This is our first podcast back from our break where we did Where's Jar Jar? And I just wanted to thank everyone for checking that out. You guys really showed up in the support and the kind words. And I'm happy to say Where's Jar Jar is our 4th most downloaded episode. So I really do appreciate that. We love the love that it got. And it was a big passion project for us. So it's nice to see that it was well received. And, tell people about it still because it could go to number 1 if you share it a little bit more. But yeah, again, seriously, thank you guys so much for doing that. I like to remind you guys to rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify, preferably 5 stars. Also, please subscribe because we're going to be here every single week, unless we take a break like we just did. But with that almost never happens. We're basically here every week and sometimes multiple times a week. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Hive, @Stark Wars Pod. Also, ask us for a Discord because we have a little Discord community going on and we'd love to have you guys. I'm trying to revitalize that. I know I kind of a bunch of people joined and I didn't do anything with it. Nobody talked in it. It's kind of sad, but I'm doing things in there now, guys. I do question of the day. So, and maybe we'll do some activities coming up. So if you're interested in that, hit us up. But that is all we got for you guys. Thank you so much for listening and we will see you next time. Bye.